Hello everyone, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. It's another day. It's 4:13 p.m. Pacific time. It's January 5th, 2026. It's Monday. Let's begin. How Zohran Mamdani bucked the establishment and won election in middle school. In the fall of 2004, with the 9/11 terrorist attacks in Iraq war fresh in their minds, middle schoolers at New York City's Bank Street School for Children had a presidential election. The rules were simple. Only 8th graders could run, 7th graders could vote, but had to just sit and watch, as former student John Califf remembers playing as special interest groups. The 7th graders weren't having it. 8th graders that fall weren't interested in politics, recalled classmate Evan Rothsmith. Meanwhile, our year was just chock full of, as it turned out, people who were already obsessed with politics. Among them was a bright, charismatic, soccer-loving 12-year-old named Zohran Mamdani. That fall, McAuliffe and Smith plotted a stealth campaign that would overturn the game's political establishment. Smith would be Mamdani's running mate, McAuliffe their campaign manager. Their key plays appeal to youth vote, said McAuliffe. In this case, 8-year-olds to 12-year-olds, basically, who felt they were being taken for granted by the simulation's two major parties. After persuading teachers to let them run an independent party primary, other kids ran as Greens, Libertarians, Communists, and the like. Mamdani and his friends created their own entity, the Cow Party, promising free chocolate milk. Created posters that riffed on the Got Milk ads, and after persuading a classmate representing the National Organization for Women to endorse them, adopted the slogan, "I want a cow right now." We were all sort of trying to poke holes in the world around us and trying to make it a more fair, caring place, said McAuliffe. 21 years later, teachers and classmates who watched Mamdani campaign in 2004 and who saw him at Bank Street more broadly say the storied progressive private school located since 1970 on Manhattan's Upper West Side played a key role in forging his public personality and nurturing his love of politics. They say it also informed the improbable insurgent campaign in which the avowed Democratic Socialist State Assemblyman became New York City on New Year's Day. The school did the right thing by letting a bunch of kids who were really into something play a bigger role in it than the kids who weren't, said Smith, a pollster and political consultant. That was prescient in terms of exactly what Zohran did over this last year. In its wisdom, Smith said the school in 2004 enabled Mamdani and his pals to engage in a timeless political maneuver. If the establishment isn't delivering, someone has to beat down the door. The 5th graders loved him. Founded more than a century ago in New York's West Village School, part of a large graduate school of education, has long exposed a hands-on philosophy of learning. First graders, for instance, spend their entire year exploring how people connected, starting in the classroom and expanding through the neighborhood via field trips and interviews. In a culminating project, they build a detailed neighborhood out of materials like cardboard, wood, and clay, and create original plays that explore the life of the city. 5th graders spend the whole year studying China, its geography, culture, and history. The year culminates in a wide-ranging debates around the Mao Zedong's leadership and impact on Chinese society. During this year's New York mayoral campaign, Mamdani's connection to the school surfaced only occasionally, most notably in a classmate remembrance of 2004. Otherwise, the school served almost entirely as a stand-in for Mamdani's perceived privilege and elitism, the New York Post dubbed it posh. And in a lengthy piece on the mayor and conservative, Spectator devoted exactly 9 words to Bank Street, calling it a pricey private school known for its progressive commitments. Daily Mail called it a private, ultra-progressive academy favored by Manhattan's liberal elite. in order both its higher upper school tuition now north of $66,000 and the fact that students address teachers by their first names. More often, Mamdani's champion of democratic socialism simply drove conservative Republicans and moderate Democrats crazy after he won the city's Democratic primary in June. President Donald Trump called Mamdani's a 100% communist lunatic. The issue forged the unlikely Mamdani Hauchul alliance in November after Mamdani beat his nearest opponent, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, by more than 200,000 votes. Trump invited the mayor-elect to the White House, where he changed his tune, saying, "We have one thing in common. We want this city of ours that we love to do very well." Born in Uganda, Mamdani arrived in New York City when he was 7, the child of high-flying intellectuals. His mother, Mira Nair, is a well-known Indian-American filmmaker whose credits include Mississippi Masala, Monsoon Wedding, and The Namesake. His father, Mahmoud, is an anthropology professor at the Columbia University. As a student at this tiny school, classmate McAuliffe called him as a extremely religious and even at the age extremely charismatic, which is an age where you don't even really know what that is yet. A bit of that charisma likely rubbed off on McAuliffe, who'd go on to work in the Biden administration and win an upset victory in November of Virginia, House seat long held by Republicans. Brooknell, Mamdani's 7th grade humanities teacher, recalled his dimply bright, sweet smile and remembered him as an incredibly adept at speaking to adults. "He is truly the most charismatic person I have ever met in my life," she said. Now still remembers the day in 2004 when Mamdani asked if she needed a personal email account. At the time, Google was offering Gmail its new service on an invitation-only basis. Somehow, invitations to share 2 decades later now laughed at the memory "I am at gmail.com because of Zohran," which is just bananas. She and others recalled him not just as charismatic but generous with his time and attention, especially with younger classmates. "You can always tell a kid is a good egg, when they are nice to the younger children," said now. The 5th graders loved him and he was really sweet to them. She noted the Bank Street, for years located in a 6-story high-rise off Broadway in Manhattan's Morningside Heights neighborhood, at the time required students to eat lunch in their classrooms. Most days, teachers ate with them, and most days Mamdani brought this delicious snack in his lunch known as a Kathy roll. One for him, another for her. Striving to live democratically, Mamdani's state legislative and transition offices did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Several who knew him in this period say the school played a key part in his personal and political development, not to mention his adventurous spirit, his ease with being in public, and his ability to work with both sides of an issue. Cities keep changing. Who runs schools? Are they just running in place? Founded in 1916 by philosopher and educator Lucy Sprague Mitchell, pre-education pioneer John Dewey, Bank Street College of Education was among the first to champion child-centered learning as an alternative to heavy role learning in vogue at the time. Originally called the Bureau of Educational Experiments, it brought together educators, social workers, and psychologists to study how children actually learn. Rare for its time, that led to several overlapping missions with Bank Street over the years, training thousands of educators, even as it turned to its school for children as an in-house research lab for new ideas. The school's influence has been widespread, affecting or very popular culture. In 1951, Mitchell made in a seminal book that children's stories should be anchored in the real world and familiar objects, not in fairy stories or fantasy lands. She created Bank Street's Writers Lab, a workshop that learned the careers of many children's authors, including Margaret Wise Brown, whose 1947 picture book Goodnight Moon turned the common objects of a child's bedroom into a personal bestseller. Another Writers Lab alumnus, author Maurice Sendak, once told in an interview, "The fearsome creatures in 19th century where the wild things are in fantasy characters. There he's there his unkempt old world, you Israelis who picked you up and hugged you and kissed you. Oh, we could eat you up. The school's longtime credo aims not only to encourage children's intellectual curiosity, flexibility, and gentleness, but urges them to live democratically inside and outside of school. Key to living, said Shel Palau Saransky. Bank Street's president is the ability to understand different people's perspective. A former senior deputy chancellor of New York City schools, Polako Saransky, said, Mamdani's experience at Bank Street may well play a large role not just in how he campaigned, but in how he governs. Education makes up 37% of the city's budget, with tremendous opportunities to shape the lives of children and families. This is our moment. Six policy fellows share their strategies. Mamdani has already put forth an early childhood proposal that promises free care for every child 6 weeks to 5 years old, offering childcare workers wages that match those of public school teachers. But he also faces the daunting task of educating a huge influx of migrant students that, over the past several years, have both challenged the system and, in truth, kept its enrollment from shrinking further. Inaugurated on January 1st, Mamdani has moved quickly on education, naming a few schools the day before he was sworn in. Kamar Samuels currently oversees Manhattan's District 3, which covers the Upper West Side, Morningside Heights, and parts of Harlem. A former teacher in the Bronx with nearly 20 years of experience, Samuels also led school integration efforts and worked to scale gifted programs. Mamdani also reversed course on a campaign promise to end mayoral controls of schools, saying he'd the state legislature for a continuation of the policy. New York's mayor picks the chancellor and appoints most members of the panel for education policy, which oversees schools. Mamdani on Wednesday promised to enact mayoral control differently. I have been skeptical of major control in the past, he said, even at times going as far as wanting to end the system entirely, but he acknowledged that New Yorkers need to know where the buck stops with me. Notably, said Polako Saransky, Mamdani may well rely on his alma mater for help with one key task, keeping schools in the nation's district staffed and running smoothly. Bank Street is now the city's foremost principal training program, minting as many as 300 new principals a year and 500 to 600 teachers. A student who didn't want to play the thing that was easy at Bank Street, the young Mamdani attended the city's selective public Bronx High School of Science. He later earned a bachelor's degree at Baldwin College in Maine. Asked whether it's a bad look to have an alumnus of an exclusive private school become the new mayor, he shrugged. A lot of our leaders go to private schools, he said. It's rare to have a democratic socialist leader, and so that's why people are in the question. As New York City private schools, he said, Bank Street is a bit different, not just in terms of philosophy and pedagogy. Students of color comprise the majority, and two-thirds now receive financial aid, far more than in Mamdani's era. It's also one of the most diverse private schools in the city, both racially and socio-economically. The Bank Street curriculum still relies on immersing students in role-playing exercises and them to step into the shoes of people they might not always agree with. Relying on simulations creates a lived experience in a classroom setting that feels very real, said Polako Saransky. It sticks with you. It teaches you a lot of dilemmas and questions and skills that you need to be an active participant in democracy. Longtime humanities teacher Ali Kersey, who trained at and taught there 26 years, said founder Mitchell believed creative, experiential learning that fosters ethical development can help strengthen democracy. As ICE sweeps up parents, New York City schools step up their support. As the 8th grade humanities teacher in 2005-2006, McCursey introduced Mamdani and his classmates to the foundational principles of democracy in ancient Greece. Fast forward to in democracy, an extensive judicial branch simulations loosely based on the First Amendment principles of the 1969 Tinker vs. Des Moines case, which granted students the same free speech rights in school as elsewhere. The case pitted junior and senior high school students against their school to wear black armbands in silent protest against the Vietnam War. Mamdani, she recalled, argued on the side of the school board, which wanted to limit expression to minimize disruption. From there, they undertook a 12-week national simulation, taking on the roles of actual legislators. Mamdani, the scion of Upper West Side cultural royalty, played Lincoln Chaffee, the moderate Republican senator from Rhode Island. I remember that being a really interesting choice, said McCarthy. Mamdani was always a student who didn't want to play the thing that was easy. He wanted to be challenged. More to the point, she said, he liked being a consensus builder. McCarthy recalled that the students that year in room 420, yes, they got the joke about the number associated with cannabis culture. We're really an exceptional group of young people. They wanted to dig into tax policy. I just remember being surprised that they were really interested in the mechanisms of funding around bills. In addition to debating the usual suspects, gun control, abortion, the environment, tax codes were on the table, she said. They were asking really fundamental questions around equity and what's equitable. What does justice look like at the level of Minutui at the legislative level? Excuse me for that. The simulation that year became such a part of the students' fiber that McCarthy would sometimes have to throw them out of the classroom and classroom at the end of class just to end debates. They'd carry it to lunch and would often still be discussing issues after school. One morning, she showed up to class expecting students to spend the day writing a bill, only to be presented with the finished version. They stayed up late, they said, hammering out the details over the phone. Seminole 2004 mock election classmate McAuliffe recalled the trio got very granular about the vote counting. Each class had only 45 people, so they were able to figure out who Zohran needed to talk to, figure out what each person wanted to hear about. In the end, the cows won the independent primary and took on the establishment. The granular approach apparently worked. Mamdani and Smith won by a single vote. For Smith, it was a confirmation for all the striving 7th graders that you can just go for it and try it and beat down the door. And sometimes it works. Again, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Comment down below, let me know what you think in the comments, obviously. And follow me on Instagram, Studio11. Follow me on X, Studio 2020. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.